I was the only one who helped my ex mill when her entire family turned their backs on her. She recently passed away and left all her inheritance to me. Now, there's a knock on my door, and I open it to find 8 people standing there, all waiting for their share. Hi guys, I'm in a fix and would like to know everyone's opinion. My name is Gigi, 27, I have a 7-year-old daughter Naomi. I was married to my ex-husband Jack, 30, for almost 8 years. When I was 2 months pregnant at the time with our second child, I found out that my ex-husband was cheating on me with his coworker, Suzanne, 28, when I accidentally came across their text messages on his phone. When I confronted him about it in tears, Jack finally told me that Suzanne was also pregnant with his child. Hearing his words, I was so shocked that I almost fainted. My husband and I had several fights, and despite my ex-mother-in-law coming to take care of me during this time, I was so stressed out that I eventually miscarried. When my ex found out that we had lost the child, he didn't even hesitate. Instead of grieving with me or comforting me, he left the house to be with Suzanne, blaming me for the loss of our child. I was devastated and cried for days. Thankfully, my ex-mother-in-law stayed with me throughout this time and took care of my daughter Naomi, so I could grieve in peace. Jack and I had a nasty divorce where he refused to pay me child support, but eventually, the court forced him to do so. Throughout the divorce, Jack made it very clear that he didn't want to be involved in either mine or Naomi's lives anymore. He gave up full custody to me, which absolutely broke my heart for my daughter, but there was nothing that I could do. The only thing he has ever done is pay child support every month. He has never made any attempts to visit or get to know Naomi. Eventually, I found out that Suzanne gave birth to his son, and they have been together ever since. Throughout all of this, my parents and my ex-mother-in-law were there for me each and every day. You see, my ex-mother-in-law and my parents had known each other, and had been the best of friends for a very long time. This is how me and Jack first met each other through our parents and eventually started dating. When Jack's mom, my ex-mother-in-law, first found out that Jack had cheated on me, she was extremely upset at him and showed her support for me. She and Jack fought a lot regarding his affair, and she vowed to never speak to him again when she found out that he was leaving me. She also warned him that she wanted nothing to do with his affair partner and their child. I know it's shocking, but my ex-mother-in-law kept that promise until the day she died. She refused to speak to Jack even when Jack begged her to visit him and his son with his affair partner. Suzanne was extremely jealous of me and my child because she was never considered family by my ex-mother-in-law. When my ex-mother-in-law first came to support me, she faced a lot of backlash from her family. You see, Jack had lost his father a few years ago, so his relatives tried to convince ex-mother-in-law to forgive him. They told her that Jack was her son, so she should let bygones be bygones and visit his child. My ex-mother-in-law firmly refused. When Suzanne gave birth to Jack's child, his relatives rallied around him, despite knowing that he had cheated on me. They didn't even bother to care or check on me and my child. Things got so bad between ex-mother-in-law and her family that they started to exclude her from their celebrations and family events, just so that they could invite Jack instead, as my ex-mother-in-law always refused to attend events if Jack was going to attend with his affair partner. I always felt bad for my ex-mother-in-law because of this, but she assured me that I was like her child too, and she didn't mind if her relatives dropped her. I'm extremely grateful that I had a woman like her as my mother-in-law, because it's rare to be loved and supported this much. Unfortunately, my ex-mother-in-law became unwell, losing her ability to walk and manage on her own. I extended an invitation for her to move in with me permanently, committing to care for her to ensure she had support around the clock. We enlisted the help of a live-in nanny who tended to her needs in the mornings. As for the evenings, the responsibility fell on me. I dedicated countless hours to her care, and honestly, I didn't mind. Naomi, always fond of her grandma, was thrilled to have her living with us at our place. During her stay with us, my ex-mother-in-law revealed something significant. She told me how, when she first learned about Jack leaving me, she had decided to make changes to her will. Initially, she had intended for my ex-husband, being her only child, to inherit everything. However, upon discovering his affair, she had amended the will. Now, the house and her life insurance were designated for Naomi. She had also added me in her will to receive a large portion of her money and her family heirloom. It was a gesture that helped both honor and trust. Her wish was for me to safeguard these possessions, passing them down to Naomi when the time was right. The idea that a piece of her, and perhaps generations before her, would continue in our family brought a profound sense of connection. My ex-husband was going to inherit her car and his dad's entire art collection. Until my daughter turns 18, the money would be in my trust. If I pass away, my parents would take care of it. As she disclosed the details, a mix of emotions washed over me. Shock, gratitude, and a hint of sadness lingered in the air. Knowing that she recognized the hardships we endured and wanted to secure Naomi's future filled me with appreciation. I assured my ex-mother-in-law multiple times that she could change the will again if she wanted to include Suzanne and their affair child. I emphasized I would never hold a grudge against her, as Suzanne was his wife now. But my ex-mother-in-law reiterated that she only recognized me as her son's wife, despite our divorce. Hence, she felt Naomi was the rightful inheritor of her home to carry forth the family legacy. I understood where she was coming from, and I accepted her decision. Throughout her stay with me, Jack never bothered to call and ask about her health. Despite our differences, I would have had no issues if he had come to check up on her, but he never cared to do so. One day, my ex-mother-in-law had breathing difficulties, and I had to rush her to the hospital. I was afraid something might happen to her. While my dad took care of Naomi, my mom and I spent the entire night at the hospital, praying she would get better. Luckily, she did, and we could take her home. After this health scare, I didn't want my ex-mother-in-law to pass away without Jack even making amends with her. Keeping our differences aside, I called him, begging him to visit my ex-mother-in-law. I told him how her doctor had warned us of her condition, and I was afraid that she wouldn't survive for long. Instead of being concerned for her, Jack started to argue about how his mother had never bothered to form a relationship with Suzanne. I beseeched him to keep his ego aside for the sake of his mother. He argued that he had a busy schedule and couldn't spare much time. It was disheartening to witness his indifference, especially when faced with the frailty of his mother's health. Despite his reluctance, I persisted, urging him to reconsider and spend some quality time with her. Reluctantly, he agreed to a brief visit. When Jack finally arrived, I was shocked to see that he had brought Suzanne along with him. I didn't object, although I wasn't thrilled about her coming into my home. But for the sake of my ex-mother-in-law, I kept my mouth shut. When he saw his mother, it was evident that the strained relationship between them lingered. The room was filled with awkward silences, punctuated by forced conversations. Jack's behavior remained unchanged towards her, even when he saw her in this frail state. He spoke in measured tones, avoiding any meaningful conversation with her. It became apparent that his visit was more of a formality than a genuine attempt to mend their fractured bond. Disheartened by the lack of emotional connection, I found solace in the fact that at the very least, Jack had honored his commitment to visit. When my ex-mother-in-law noticed that he had come to visit with Suzanne and their affair child, she started to protest. I immediately calmed her down, assuring her that it was okay and that I didn't mind whoever Jack brought along, as long as he had come to visit and support her. My ex-mother-in-law's health was fast deteriorating, and she was completely bedbound, so there wasn't much that she could do. Staying true to my promise, I remained silent even when Suzanne started being very nice to her. When my ex-mother-in-law expressed again that she didn't want to be around Darren, Suzanne reminded her that Darren was her grandchild too. I walked out of the room to give them all privacy. I also wanted to check up on my daughter, who looked sad and hurt to see her father. Jack never even bothered to acknowledge her. While I was in the kitchen, I noticed Suzanne going into our backyard and talking to someone over the phone. The open window carried her laughter as she spoke about how she was forced to come and visit Jack's mother. She discussed how Jack had told her that his mother would be leaving behind everything for him, so the least they could do was visit her for the final time. She expressed how she couldn't wait to move into the house and change it, as my ex-mother-in-law had no taste whatsoever.